You might want to brace yourself for this because what Kevin O'Leary just revealed about XRP is shaking the entire financial world. He looked straight into the camera and said 7 words that sent a shockwave through the industry. Most people have no idea what's coming. And he wasn't exaggerating. This wasn't just another interview or a soundbite for clicks. This was a moment where one of the most recognized investors in the world broke silence on what could be the biggest shift in global finance since the birth of the internet. Because for years, people have treated XRP as just another crypto token. But what O'Leary just pointed out is that XRP isn't playing in the same arena as the rest. It's not chasing headlines. It's building the rails that the next generation of money will move on. And that changes everything. Now, before we get into what O'Leary revealed and why the biggest institutions in the world are circling XRP like sharks that just smelled opportunity, if you truly want to understand how the top 1% are positioning for what's next, this is your moment. Inside the XRP Millionaire Blueprint Pyro, you'll learn exactly how the top 1% think, position, and multiply wealth in moments like this. It includes the XRP Millionaire Blueprint, your step-by-step guide to life-changing crypto positioning, and the Millionaire 100x Stock Formula, a complete breakdown of the high-growth stock strategy used by elite investors. Plus, you'll get exclusive weekly XRP updates that make you think, plan, and act like the top 1%. It's all inside the XRP Millionaire Blueprint Pyro, linked at the top of the video description. All right, let's get into what's really unfolding. For weeks, the crypto market's been a storm. Bitcoin swinging like a pendulum. Ethereum's network keeps clogging. Even stablecoins have been temporarily losing their peg. But through all that chaos, XRP stood tall. It didn't freeze. It didn't stumble. It thrived. While Ethereum gas fees spiked into the thousands and Binance scrambled to stabilize liquidity, XRP's ledger kept running like a machine, fast, efficient, and stable. That's what caught Kevin O'Leary's attention. See, O'Leary's not a hype guy. He's brutally direct. He spent years calling out coins that made no sense and companies built on thin air. But this time, his tone was different. He said, "We're about to witness a financial transformation that'll be written in history books, and that XRP is right in the middle of it." He said, "The next decade won't be about chasing prices. It'll be about owning the rails." And that single sentence, owning the rails, is the entire playbook for where the smart money is going. Because this isn't 2017 anymore. We've entered a new financial era, one built on tokenized capital markets. Every asset you can think of, bonds, commodities, currencies, equities, is being rebuilt to move across digital rails. And when this shift hits full scale, the networks that can move trillions of dollars instantly, securely, and with compliance will become the backbone of global liquidity. That's exactly where XRP fits in. O'Leary emphasized something that very few people are paying attention to. He said, "Retail investors are still chasing stories. Institutions are building positions." In simple terms, while the crowd argues on social media, the billion-dollar desks are silently preparing. They're not buying noise, they're buying infrastructure. And that's where XRP shines. The data already shows what's happening behind the scenes. Top XRP wallets, those linked to exchanges, funds, and Ripple-associated entities, aren't selling. They're accumulating, slowly, quietly. The same pattern that's repeated before every major XRP run is happening again right now. That's what O'Leary means when he says you have no idea what's coming, because the next big crypto move won't look like the last one. This isn't going to be a frenzy of retail traders chasing candles. It's going to be a liquidity migration, a flood of institutional capital shifting from the old system to the new rails of finance. And XRP's technology was built to handle that scale. When asked which digital assets will survive regulation and thrive under institutional oversight, O'Leary made it clear, the ones that can play nice with governments and already have real use cases. That sounds familiar, doesn't it? Because that's exactly what Ripple's been building since day one. While other projects tried to fight regulators, Ripple built relationships with them. While others chased hype, Ripple focused on real-world adoption, payments, remittances, cross-border liquidity, and now, those years of groundwork are paying off in ways most investors can't even imagine. Look at what's happening behind closed doors. The financial giants, Visa, PayPal, Fidelity, and even central banks are laying down blockchain rails for settlement. They're not testing ideas anymore. They're integrating systems that actually move money faster, cheaper, and more transparently than ever before. And XRP's ledger, designed for exactly that purpose, is becoming a vital part of the conversation. You see, XRP's story was never meant to be about short-term moves. It's about efficiency. And in global finance, efficiency isn't just a perk. It's everything. Every second saved, every cent trimmed off a transaction multiplies into billions of dollars at scale. And here's where the timing gets even more powerful. Interest rates are beginning to drop again. Liquidity is flooding back into the system. Institutions are desperate for yield, for efficiency, for infrastructure that can move capital seamlessly. XRP fits that need like a glove. It's not just ready, it's proven. That's why Kevin O'Leary's tone shifted. He's not predicting a future. He's describing a process that's already underway. The rails of finance are being rebuilt in real time, and institutions are racing to claim their position. The next generation of wealth isn't being created through speculation. It's being created through ownership of systems. And XRP's ledger is one of those systems. Think of it like this. When the internet was built, most people focused on websites. But the real wealth went to the ones who owned the protocols, the underlying technology that made everything connect. That's what XRP is becoming for money, the protocol of value transfer. And once that becomes mainstream knowledge, everything changes. Because institutions don't buy narratives, they buy infrastructure. They don't want exposure to coins. They want exposure to the rails that can settle trillions. XRP's ledger is built for exactly that. Now, what makes this even more interesting is how closely O'Leary's message aligns with what other major figures like Tom Lee and Cathie Wood have been saying. Lee's been predicting a massive capital migration into digital assets, not as a gamble, but as a strategic realignment of global finance. Cathie Wood has called stablecoins the bridge asset between the old financial world and the new digital one. And when those bridges expand, guess what connects them? The technology that can handle global scale with speed, liquidity, and compliance. That's XRP's wheelhouse. Meanwhile, governments that once resisted blockchain are now embracing it. The US, Europe, and Asia are rolling out frameworks that finally separate speculative noise from real infrastructure. Banks can now hold digital assets. Broker-dealers can tokenize securities. Funds can launch ETFs directly tied to digital rails. That's not restriction, it's validation. And once that door is open, the flood begins. When institutions realize they can move trillions across blockchain rails safely, the entire market will reprice overnight. XRP's ledger is positioned as one of the few capable of handling that demand at global scale. Because in a world where money moves digitally, performance isn't optional, it's mandatory. You can't have networks freezing when markets move. You can't have $1,000 fees to send value. You need something stable, efficient, compliant, and fast. And that's the exact formula that Ripple has built XRP around. This is what O'Leary meant when he said most people have no idea what's coming. He's seen the plans, the pilots, the institutional testing that's already in motion. He knows the moment those systems flip on, trillions will start to move in ways the average investor can't even imagine. And when that happens, the assets powering those movements, like XRP, won't just rise in visibility, they'll become essential. Because this shift isn't just about crypto, it's about control over global liquidity. The institutions that own the rails own the flow of money. That's the real game being played. And those who see it early have a chance to position themselves before the rest of the world wakes up. Kevin O'Leary's words weren't just an observation, they were a signal that the next evolution of global finance is already underway, and that XRP's role in it is far deeper than most realize. The shift he's talking about isn't about price movement on a chart, it's about power. The power to move trillions of dollars instantly, globally, and with full transparency. And right now, the old systems of finance, SWIFT, ACH, Fedwire, correspondent banking are starting to feel that pressure. You see, those systems were never built for the speed and volume of today's economy. They were designed in an era before the internet. Transactions take days to clear, fees pile up, and when you multiply that across global trade, remittances, and corporate settlements, the inefficiency becomes massive. That's where Ripple's vision, powered by XRP, comes in. Ripple isn't trying to destroy the old system, it's upgrading it. It's building the internet of value, a network where money moves as easily as information. O'Leary's warning connects to this transformation. He said that the true opportunity in this decade won't come from chasing short-term trends. It'll come from understanding which technologies become the foundation of finance itself. And when you follow that logic, XRP checks every box. Let's break it down in simple terms. Imagine a bank in Japan wants to send $100 million to a partner in Brazil. Using traditional rails like SWIFT, that transfer can take up to 5 days, involve multiple intermediaries, and cost tens of thousands in transaction fees. With Ripple's on-demand liquidity, that same transfer can happen in seconds for a fraction of a cent using XRP as the bridge currency. No waiting, no middlemen, no excess cost. That's not just convenience, that's transformation. Multiply that across every bank, every payment processor, every government settlement system, and you start to see the scale of what's being built. This isn't about making crypto traders rich. It's about rebuilding the plumbing of global money. And XRP is the bridge connecting every currency and every network on the planet. That's why O'Leary said most people have no idea what's coming, because the shift is invisible to the public until it's already done. The pilots, the partnerships, the integrations, all of it is happening quietly. Ripple has deals with major banks, remittance companies, and financial institutions across more than 50 countries. They've built corridors connecting Asia, the Middle East, Africa, and North America. Each corridor adds more liquidity, more utility, and more validation to XRP's role in the system. And the timing couldn't be better because after years of regulatory uncertainty, Ripple finally achieved what almost no other crypto company in the US has: regulatory clarity. The ruling that XRP isn't a security in secondary sales was a turning point. It removed the biggest barrier for institutions. Suddenly, banks, funds, and corporations could interact with XRP without legal confusion. That ruling opened the floodgates for real adoption. Since that decision, Ripple has been moving fast. They acquired Metaco, a top-tier institutional custody platform that allows banks to store and manage digital assets safely. They bought G Treasury, a corporate liquidity management company, giving Ripple access to the heart of global treasury operations. And they expanded into stablecoin infrastructure, ensuring that Ripple can handle everything from tokenized currencies to digital dollars. Every move has one goal: to make Ripple and XRP the foundation of the new financial infrastructure, the rails of tomorrow's global economy. Now, if you've been watching on-chain data, you'll see something incredible happening. Large XRP wallets, the ones often linked to institutions or deep liquidity providers, are accumulating again. Exchange balances are dropping while total network activity rises. That means XRP is leaving exchanges, moving into cold storage, private custody, or institutional vaults. That's the classic pattern of smart money accumulation before utility-driven demand spikes, and that's the quiet stage we're in right now. The stage O'Leary called the setup before the flood. When the system finally flips from testing to full-scale deployment, there won't be time to react. The revaluation won't happen gradually. It'll happen all at once, as trillions of dollars move through these digital rails for the first time. Think of it like the early internet. Before broadband, before social media, there were companies quietly laying down fiber optic cables connecting cities and countries. Hardly anyone noticed. Then one day, the entire world was online. The same thing is happening with money. Ripple is laying the cables for value, and when the switch flips, the flow begins instantly. This is also why so many traditional financial giants are joining forces behind the scenes. They're not competing with blockchain, they're integrating it. Visa is building settlement systems on RippleNet. PayPal is working on blockchain-based transfers. Even central banks are launching pilot programs for digital currencies, often using technology that connects directly or indirectly to Ripple's infrastructure. And this isn't speculation, it's documented. Ripple's technology has already been used in multiple central bank digital currency CBDC projects. They've worked with the Royal Monetary Authority of Bhutan, the Republic of Palau, and other national banks to test and deploy tokenized currency systems. These are not small experiments. They're the early steps toward a global financial network that runs on blockchain rails. When that network goes live, XRP becomes the universal translator between currencies. It's not just about moving dollars to euros or yen to pesos. It's about connecting entire economies. Whether a transaction involves US dollars, a digital pound, or a CBDC in Africa, XRP can bridge them instantly. That's what gives it such a powerful advantage. And that's exactly why institutional interest is growing. Hedge funds, private equity firms, and even sovereign wealth funds are preparing for this shift. They understand that blockchain isn't replacing the financial system, it's upgrading it. And XRP, by design, is positioned at the center of that upgrade. It's also worth noting that Ripple's strategy has always been long-term. While most projects focused on short-term gains, Ripple was sitting in meetings with regulators, banks, and governments. They built trust first, and now that trust is paying off. The partnerships they formed years ago are evolving into production-level integrations. That's why Kevin O'Leary and other major investors are paying attention now. The groundwork is done. The system is ready. We're also seeing governments begin to align on regulations. In the US, new frameworks are allowing banks to hold digital assets directly. In Europe, MiCA regulations have opened clear paths for crypto companies to operate under unified rules. In Asia, countries like Singapore, Japan, and the UAE are creating regulatory sandboxes specifically for blockchain payments. For the first time, global finance is synchronizing around digital infrastructure, and Ripple's already there, waiting. That's the part that most people miss. By the time the headlines talk about mass adoption, the institutions are already in position. They don't announce their moves. They act quietly, build positions, test systems, and wait for the right moment. That's what's happening right now with XRP. We can also see it in how traditional financial software is being upgraded. Treasury management systems, bank settlement engines, and even accounting software are beginning to include blockchain connectivity. Ripple's API and XRP ledger integrations are appearing in enterprise-level financial tools. It's subtle but revolutionary. When every major corporate system can move value across Ripple's network, the world's money starts flowing digitally by default. That's when things accelerate. because once global payments, supply chains, and capital markets are all connected through digital rails, liquidity flows freely. The barriers that once slowed money vanish, the inefficiencies that cost trillions annually disappear, and the assets that power that new infrastructure, like XRP, become the heartbeat of the new system. O'Leary called it the migration of capital, and that phrase perfectly describes what's coming. The world's liquidity, corporate funds, government reserves, institutional assets is preparing to move into programmable blockchain-based systems. That's not a theory anymore. It's happening. And when that transition hits full scale, XRP will be one of the few assets capable of handling the load. What's unfolding now isn't a crypto boom. It's a financial reset, the shift from fragmented systems to unified digital liquidity. Ripple's network is built for this exact moment. Every test, every partnership, every acquisition has been leading to one destination, becoming the digital backbone of global money. Kevin O'Leary saw the writing on the wall. He's been inside boardrooms, seen the white papers, and heard the plans that most people never will. That's why his tone carried weight. He wasn't warning of risk. He was pointing to opportunity, the kind that redefines entire industries. And right now, XRP is sitting in that exact position. The rails are ready, the infrastructure is tested, the institutions are watching, and the flow of money is about to change forever. And that brings us to what happens next. Because while the systems are being built, the next stage, the moment when institutional liquidity starts moving, will change everything. In the next part, we'll go deeper into what's coming when that liquidity flips on, what Ripple's global network really looks like behind the scenes, and why this next phase could redefine wealth creation for an entire generation. When you step back and look at the bigger picture, what Kevin O'Leary was talking about becomes crystal clear. This isn't a story about short-term gains or wild price swings. This is about the structural transformation of global finance. And XRP is one of the few assets perfectly positioned at the center of it. The migration of liquidity from legacy systems into blockchain rails isn't something that will happen slowly. It's a movement that will happen in stages, quietly at first, and then all at once. Think about how banks operate today. Corporate treasuries, cross-border payments, and institutional settlements rely on layers of intermediaries, each adding time and cost to the system. For decades, inefficiencies like these were accepted as normal, but Ripple has already built a system that removes those inefficiencies entirely. XRP settles transactions in seconds, at fractions of a cent, and can handle billions in liquidity without congestion. That's the level of reliability institutions need. O'Leary's warning that most people have no idea what's coming comes down to one fact. The public still measures progress by price, while the real shift is happening at the infrastructure level. Institutions aren't focused on whether XRP hits $5, $10, or $50. They're focused on whether XRP can reliably move trillions of dollars, integrate with banking systems, and meet regulatory standards. That's why so much accumulation is happening behind the scenes. Wallets tied to major institutions are growing. Exchange balances are shrinking. Coins are moving into cold storage. This is all classic smart money behavior before a massive liquidity surge. The next phase will be the realization stage. Once enough capital starts flowing into XRP-powered systems, the value of the asset will reflect not speculation, but utility and adoption. It's similar to how TCP/IP underpinned the internet. The early protocols weren't flashy or hyped, they simply worked. But once adoption skyrocketed, the value of the companies and networks built on top of them exploded. XRP is the protocol for global money transfer, and that's why institutions are quietly loading positions now. We can already see early signs of this transformation. Ripple's network, RippleNet, has expanded partnerships across more than 50 countries, connecting major banks, payment providers, and corporations. Central banks are running pilot programs for digital currencies, testing how XRP can integrate into their systems. Stablecoin infrastructure is growing, with Ripple providing the rails for faster, cheaper, and fully compliant transfers. Every corridor, every partnership, every integration strengthens XRP's role as the backbone of the emerging digital financial ecosystem. O'Leary's point is simple. While retail investors focus on charts and narratives, the top-tier financial players are quietly building the next system. They're establishing control over the rails that move global liquidity. They're not chasing hype. They're securing the infrastructure that will define wealth creation for the next decade. And that's exactly the opportunity that exists for anyone who understands what's happening. This is why the next phase of growth won't look like the crypto bull runs of the past. It won't be fueled by social media hype or short-term FOMO. It will be driven by capital migration, by institutions moving billions to the networks that are proven, compliant, and scalable. XRP is perfectly positioned for that. For every factor is aligning: regulatory clarity, robust infrastructure, global adoption, and institutional accumulation. These are the ingredients for a financial transformation that will be remembered for decades. The moment this liquidity enters the system at scale, it will redefine how value moves and the assets powering that infrastructure. XRP being at the forefront will be at the heart of the change. And this is why timing matters. The systems are already being built. The partnerships are already operational. The wallets are already accumulating. When the floodgates open, the public narrative will catch up after the fact. That's exactly why O'Leary's warning resonates so strongly. For anyone serious about positioning themselves for this next phase, understanding the mindset of the top 1% is crucial. The next wave of wealth won't come from following price charts. It comes from understanding where the real money is going, how the rails of finance are being rebuilt, and which assets will power the future of liquidity. If you want to get fully prepared for this, the XRP Millionaire Blueprint PRO is your blueprint. Inside, you get the XRP Millionaire Blueprint, showing step-by-step how XRP is being adopted at the infrastructure level. You also get the Millionaire 100x stock formula, revealing how the top 1% think and invest across high-growth assets. Plus, it includes exclusive weekly XRP updates that give you insights that make you think, plan, and act like the top 1%, seeing moves before the wider market does. It's all designed to give you a clear, actionable understanding of the systems behind the market, not just the prices. And it's ready for you today, linked at the top of the video description. Because the truth is, this isn't about chasing hype. It's about understanding the transformation happening in real time. It's about knowing how institutions move, how liquidity flows, and how to position yourself to benefit from the next era of global finance. And XRP is at the center of it all.